My name is Monty Okie. This is my wife, Joanne.
Hi.
Yep.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. We were born and raised here in Michigan, specifically at the University Hospital. We spent most of our 21 years,
Early years.
early years, right, in Washtenaw County in school. And then the military obligation transferred us to San Diego. We spent the next 8, 9 years there, working in the Navy and also as a teacher in San Diego County.
We were in California during the Vietnam War, so
Yes.
somebody might need that context. We enjoyed California, but we have both of our families here, and that was what was really important to us. So we chose to bring our 3 kids and move back. And when we started looking for houses, there was nothing to be had, amazingly. And finally, our parents found one, and I flew from California to see it, and it sold while I was over Chicago. So we ended up with a house completely different than what we thought we were going to get. We were looking for a modern house, and we ended up with a house built in 1867. But it proved to be a wonderful home for us and for the 6 kids that we brought up in this community. One of the things that brought us here was the fact that my parents had moved out on English Road. And we had decided we needed to be near both of our parents. So we drew a circle, a half an hour circle around English Road and a half an hour circle around Ann Arbor. And we said, somewhere in that intersection, we'll live. And we did. It's worked out well.
It is. Both of us like to help people. Joanne's been in education for 55 years.
Off and on.
Off and on like that. I've been a physician 50 years or so, and so we like helping people, and we sort of stepped into organizations what they needed help, whether it's church or whether it's school or something like that.
Community things.
Yeah.
One of the things that we saw before we moved here when we were visiting my mother was a house that was across the street from the grocery store. And it was special because it had a Snoopy mailbox. And we loved the idea. Our kids loved it. And so when we were in California, we put up a Snoopy mailbox. And we would change it every day, and we had lots of fun with it. People would, when we had new babies, they would drop baby presents off it, people we didn't know. And so when we came back, it was just shortly after that family had moved out of Manchester. And so we ended up putting up a Snoopy mailbox at our house as well. And it's been there now for how many years? 50,
We've been in the house
40,
for
45 years, something like that. And Mont is the guardian of the Snoopy. He's the person who gets up in the morning and makes sure Snoopy is outside, dressed for the weather or special occasions. And he's the person that makes sure that Snoopy goes to bed every night. I get the lucky task of drawing out the Snoopies and adding to the accessory collection.
Accessory collection, yes, that's where to put it. Yes.
And it's been a lot of fun. Our kids have grown up helping put him out, helping choose what he will wear or choose the event that it needs to celebrate. So Snoopy wears football stuff on football game days, and he's out ice skating when it's cold out, and he has his own, I like to garden, he has his own garden cart with flowers in it. Just whatever. We've had people give us suggestions. We've had, sometimes Snoopy takes a walkabout with other people, and eventually some of them come back. But we've also had one time when there was a lot of construction in front of the house. One day we got up and there was a construction Snoopy sitting on top of the thing. Snoopy has his own fan club. He gets letters and cards, and he gets his picture taken a lot. It's not unusual to walk out of the front door and see somebody standing there with a camera taking his picture. So he's very happy about that. It's been a lot of fun, and we were lucky enough to be in a place that the kids go by, so they'll stop and talk to him on the way back or forth sometimes. it's just been an enjoyable occasion. And I remember when Dr. Seuss died. It was a snowy day. There was snow on the ground, and we stuck all the Snoopies that we had, close to 50 of them,
All 50.
all the way across the yard
Yeah.
to celebrate his life.
His life.
And what, because you've kept this up for such a long time, and what made you keep doing it every day? Like, instead of just like, oh, we'll just do this fun thing for a year, and then what made you keep doing it?
For the same reason that people back then enjoyed reading Charles Schultz's cartoons.
This man is the most stubborn, methodical, driven person when he gets in a pattern. And I don't think you could get in the way of his putting up Snoopy in the morning.
In the mailbox is something that everybody loves. Think about it, It's always fun. On the cartoons, you always see him on top of the mailbox. And it brings together people. Think about the fun things.
And we can express ourselves.
Yes.
When you go to bed after the 4th of July, after all of the fireworks, we're exhausted. Well, Snoopy gets to sleep in late and be exhausted too, and it's just kind of a little ongoing conversation.
As long as it's in character.
Yeah. There are things he doesn't do anymore. We're both U of M graduates, and we grew up with the U of M. I mean, born in the U of M hospital, went to the U of M, name all that stuff. So we put up U of M flags, and they got stolen, and his hat got changed for a Spartan hat, and then we decided, no, that's just, it's not in the spirit.
Made it more generic, And it got generic, especially in wrestling, around the chicken broil, because the first few years we did it, we had signs up that said that the birds were complaining, down with Snoopy.
No, don't eat meat.
Don't eat meat, don't eat dog meat, foul play, FOWL play, and we got a kick out of that. But then
we found out from someone, like 10 years later, that they thought we were putting down the chicken broil.
Yeah.
Obviously, right. Woodstock objects to the whole idea, but it didn't quite compute. We don't know where Snoopy's going to go from here. Our house will be put up for sale, and if the person who buys it wants Snoopy, it's all theirs. Otherwise, we have to have an adoption party. Find someone who wants to adopt Snoopy and give him a loving home for the next 30, 40 years.
1,000 years.
1,000 years, something like that.
Just gotta keep going, but we're hoping that it will
I'm sure there's somebody out there who will.
I hope so.
have a moment of insanity. And my middle school teacher made caramel apples for Halloween, and I always thought that was really neat. So when we moved here, we wanted to try making caramel apples. Mm-hmm. But the problem was that the year or two before, they'd had trouble with people sticking needles and razor blades in apples, and nobody knew us, and we were a little nervous about presenting caramel apples to anybody without their knowing. So we went to Alber's and we got apples, put them in a big basket, and we had people make their own caramel apples. And at first, we bought the little teeny tiny caramels, and we undid them all, and we melted them, and we probably made 2 dozen. I mean, nobody came up the hill at that point in time. And that worked out all right, and over the years, we did it for 25 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quarter of a century.
Yeah.
Between the time that we started and the time that we ended up doing 1,000 caramel apples in 2 hours. And it went far beyond just us, obviously. Yeah. We got our extended family involved and all the kids.
The football team.
The football team, the Manchester
team. Yes.
Manchester honors group, the basketball team, the Ann Arbor Civic Ballet, kids from one of my schools. It got to be bigger and bigger, and people just got more and more efficient. they would be greeted at the front door by a skeleton. And at least one little kid, my mom said, held her bag up and asked the skeleton for trick or treat. And then they would come through and they would choose their apple and they would
Like this.
put the stick on it and then bring it over to one of the two tables that were doing the dunking. And they could either do it themselves or they could be helped. And then they would go out the other way. So we've often laughingly said that probably more people have been through our house than almost any place in Manchester. And we enjoyed it because we got to see all the kids, and that was great fun. And
Parents will still talk about they went through as kids and they remembered.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we always said kids of any age. And, the football team for a while used to change costumes before they came back for the second or third time. And then we kind of gradually, said, it's okay. If you're hungry, you're hungry. But it was a lot of fun. And after a quarter of a century, we couldn't do it any faster. Yeah. And it kept getting bigger and bigger. So we worked with the village, and it moved downtown.
Chamber of Commerce.
At that time.
That's right.
And it's still going. So that's kind of cool.
The library's taken over. Mrs. Diamond has taken over that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of fun to see the kids come down. And, sometimes people will say, well, you've got to be so old, or, if you're too old, you can't do it. Anytime a teenager wants to be in plain sight when it's dark out, I'm up for that. One time, we made it for our youngest daughter's volleyball team when she was at Kalamazoo College. They played over in Adrian and then came over for dinner. And we put the caramel apples can in hot water to soften the caramel. I forgot to turn off the water when we left to the game. The caramel exploded. And you have no idea how far 10 pounds of caramel can go on a 10-foot ceiling. But it was really impressive. Don't do that.
Don't do that, yes.
That's
But this goes back to the concept of a community event, which is nice that Manchester has stepped up with that, as well as supporting the Snoopy things too, that they're willing to, they understand it, it's fun, it's not hurting anybody, and it's a community type of thing that they all step in.
Yeah. In my other life, I was a school principal, and the school that I was at that time had every month they had a theme, and one month their theme was disabilities, and we had kids running around with Vaseline on their glasses and wearing a cast or on crutches or in a wheelchair, all trying to find out what it's like to live with a disability of some kind or another. And at the end of that month, we had a speaker that came at an assembly and talked to all the kids. And that month, my speaker was Governor Swainson. And for those of you that don't know, Governor Swainson was a Michigan governor for 2 years, and he was also a Manchester resident. And I had called him specifically because he was a war veteran that lost both of his legs below the knee and actually wore prosthesis for all of his life. So he was willing to come and talk with the kids and just tell them what it was like to manage to get around. So he came, and we were really excited to see him, and he's there on the stage, and he's wearing his trademark blue blazer with the tan khaki chinos, and his nice penny loafers, and a tie, of course. And I introduced him, and I told the kids who he was and why they might need to know who he was, and everything was going very well. The kids were being angels. He was making lots of eye contact. He said hello, and so nice to be here, that sort of thing. And then he dropped his pants.
Sitting on the stage in front.
I thought I was never going to breathe again.
on purpose?
Oh, yeah.
In front of the teachers also.
Yeah, and he's standing there in his blue blazer with his University of Michigan boxers on and his prosthesis. And he steps out of his pants and he very calmly goes on and talks about the fact that he lost his legs and he has on these special things that help him walk. And he's being really calm about it. The kids are just fine. The adults are seeing the headlines in the Ann Arbor News. But it was so wonderful. He was just so matter of fact about it all, and the kids were so interested. He took his prosthesis off and on, showed them how he did it, how he had something on his stump that kept it protected a little bit. He talked about what it was like to have a disability, what helped him when other people, sometimes people want to help you, what's helpful, what isn't helpful, how to approach it. And at the end, his final comment at the end was, the only part of the word disability that counts is ability. I had parents in the back crying. I talked later with his daughter, and she said that Governor Swainson would go, wherever he went in the state, he would go to the hospitals on his own. He would refuse to have anybody go with him. He refused any kind of publicity, but he would go and talk to amputees everywhere he went. And I thought, wow, that's somebody who just lives a good way.
Yes.
It's really nice to get to know your patients and your
Yep.
families over time,
Mm-hmm. Just like teachers get to know their students over time and their families too and everything.
because you
The
can be
con-
more useful.
Yes. That concept inside our own heart or our own brain that makes us feel good that we can actually offer them something. Whether it's something simpler, holding hands, it's whatever like this, consoling them. But that's I think a big factor.
That's one thing that it sounds really odd, but as you get older, you undergo more and more transitions where you have to leave something in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that people generally backfill, sometimes if you stay too long, that person misses their chance to be part of the community or part of, I was in schools, for example, and I always knew that if I left a piece of me, but the next person was bringing in a different piece or a different
Different piece,
gift.
Good point.
And you just kind of see yourself as part of a longer chain of events and of people.
You're here in working in the library here. What do all of you like to do? You like to help other people if they want to learn a little bit more about videoing, something like that, or if they have questions. What's the things that Mrs. Diamond have done here for hitting all ages of the whole community?
Yeah. Libraries are one of the few things that everybody has access to equally, and just looking at some of the politics and you're sitting there thinking, well, what would a community do without a library? It's been ingrained in us for I mean, I know there are countries that don't have libraries, but it's hard to imagine having that be a black hole. It's worth taking a risk to do things with other people,
Yes, that's what it
to be a part of things. It isn't always pain-free. I've been on the school board, I've worked in the schools, I've done some other things as well. And sometimes you'll be criticized for it, and sometimes people get their nose out of joint. But it's still worth it, and I would hate to see somebody not take that step, that they would be losing out on so many good things. Because if you allow potential negative things, to stop you from being a part of the community, it really is your loss.
Volunteer. Just step up and say, well, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. Go ahead and just step up if you think you could offer something that will help the community or something like that.
Yeah, and in the process, you help yourself more,
You sure do. You
I
sure
think.
do. Yeah. You're volunteering to run this video history of people.
Well, I haven't done it for 25 years, so.
Well, and you won't probably do the
Yeah,
same
you
thing.
might not,
I mean,
yeah.
I was on the school board for a few years. I'm not on the school board now. You were on the school board for a few years.
Not
Now you
now.
do something different. I mean, at every age you have, not only you have different skills and talents to offer, but also your available time. I mean, there were times when only one of us could volunteer much
yeah.
because it meant the other one was taking care of the 6 kids. So we called it parallel playing.
Yeah,
One of us was over there and the other was over here. It worked, but you know, you shouldn't feel guilty if you can't because your circumstances don't allow contribute in the same way someone else might. But at a later time or in a different situation, yeah, and it doesn't have to be big stuff. There are people in Manchester who just simply make my day by saying hi. You know, you can be part of a larger organization, but you can be an individual person that just makes things better. Some people just put back their grocery carts.
It's the little things.
Yeah,
It's
it
the
is
thing.
really. And every little tiny thing like that makes life better for everybody else, you know. Just stopping at the stop sign. I'm grateful. I know it sounds dumb, but I think so often when we think about doing something, we think we have to go into it 120% at 500 miles an hour. No, those aren't the things that really make the difference often in the long run. It's stepping out and putting Snoopy up in the morning.